what is Agfa Healthcare's position in imaging and healthcare IT worldwide?
Well, in imaging IT, we're definitely, I believe, a leader in Europe in terms of market share, a second strong company in North America. But what I think we do is really lead or guide in terms of addressing the next frontier, which is regional imaging on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that all image generating departments in a hospital are being integrated and populate the patient record with images.
What is your growth strategy for Europe?
The growth strategy for Europe is very clearly also in both directions I just mentioned. So we really believe that in Europe we are at this moment working with top customers that have challenges in front of them of a regional kind. In other words, customers, regions, groups of hospitals that do not want to limit themselves to optimizing the image workflow of a certain specific department or hospital, but rather want to make use of the knowledge that they have, the competencies that they have across a network of hospitals to serve a population. And that's, I believe, where we need to go. That's where I believe we can continue to guide the market.
And where, very much concretely, do you see the technology and workflow trends within and beyond hospitals?
In terms of workflow trends, today you have a lot of subspecialty. Yeah. So in other words, you have people that are specializing on a very specific clinical discipline. They're experts in their field. One of the challenges that you have is that you don't necessarily get the sufficient number of studies or study requests to those very bright people. So our workflow, for example, is going to make sure that studies are being routed to these people so that they are utilized in the most optimal way. In other words, that they can serve the population of patients with that specific clinical issue in the most optimal way.
What are the pillars of ISIS?
ISIS stands really for a system that is going to make sure that images, wherever they are in a hospital, are going to be acquired, then are going to be stored, are going to be shared, and last but not least, are going to be made available to a larger population of clinicians. ISIS, I mentioned system, but in all fairness, is probably not really a system. It is a number of tools that you have. It is also a number of services that are going to make sure that for all these individual departments that generate images, that are in many cases non-DICOM images, for example, ophthalmology images, dermatology images, that these are going to be indeed integrated, acquired, but also being populated with the right patient identifiers so that they're going to be adequately stored and retrievable and populate the patient record as they should.
What are your activities in the cloud sector?
Well, the cloud is, in all fairness, a buzzword. I think it's more important to talk about the different cloud services that are possible. At this moment, we're working with a number of customers on basically storage cloud services. In other words, what could happen is that you say, okay, I'm going to, after a certain amount of time, not store my images anymore within my packs, but I want them to be available off-site, remotely, in the cloud, because I will probably have lesser frequent use of these images, and I can live with a somewhat longer retrieval time. That's an example of what cloud storage services could mean.
What is happening in digital pathology?
Digital pathology is probably the next frontier. Why so? First, because as an image-intensive department in digital pathology, we have to manage images that go from 1 to 5 gigabytes in size. So in other words, there is challenges there in terms of the sheer size of the image. Imagine what it would mean in terms of storage. Imagine what it would mean in terms of also funneling this over networks. So in other words, what we need to derive is good use cases to indeed integrate these images, so that, and that's really the ultimate purpose, together with other pieces of information, like for example radiology images, or lab reports, you come to a more integrated diagnostic. And what we do with the two sites that we have engaged with, so on the one hand La Pitié-Salpêtrière in Paris, and on the other hand CHA in Canada, we're working on use cases where these digitally acquired pathology images are indeed being combined with other images and other pieces of information, and indeed then lead to a more valuable diagnosis that then will lead to a more valuable treatment.